What's up? Welcome in. It is the regular season finale. Oklahoma, LSU getting it on Saturday night in Baton Rouge. What more could you want? This is the Sooners on SI podcast. I am Ryan Chapman hanging out in More America today, the day before Thanksgiving, Blackout Wednesday. Here we go. That is the great John Hoover up in the 918. Hoove, what are your Thanksgiving responsibilities? You're an adult. You have a family, all that. I just show up somewhere with beer. That's
Yeah.
I do. I feel like you have actual responsibilities.
Uh, Sometimes I do, but this week there's a road game. My
Yeah.
responsibilities are to not get in the way of everybody else's Thanksgiving responsibilities. Don't
Very
screw it up, Hoover. That's basically what my wife tells me. My kids are saying, "Y'all want to go to the movies?" It's like, let me just get through this day, and then tomorrow I'll address dinner. We'll see. Got family coming over. Man, it's going to be a good week. Probably get some Cajun food this week. What do you think about that? Maybe get a little, I don't know, Cajun food down in Baton Rouge, huh?
You hope so. You hope so. I mean, one thing's for sure. As soon as we sit down, they're gonna shoo our asses out of the press box because that's what we do in the SEC. But a bunch of lamos over
We'll
there.
we'll
But
discuss the post
apparently
game
the spread is
podcast procedures at a later date. But yeah, it's going to be tough.
yeah. So let me just set this up right now. I don't know when the post game pod is going to get to you guys. We are flying to Baton Rouge. John and I had the great big brain thing. We were a part of the group that audibled out of flying to Auburn when the hurricane was rolling through. So we had a flight credit. So on the way to Columbia, we were like, hey, this is probably the last stand. If they win this game, we'll drive to LSU. We'll use the flight credit for the bowl game. If they lose this game, I mean, good God, it's Alabama and LSU. That they're not going to win. That's not happening. We'll book a flight to LSU, treat it as our bowl weekend, all that stuff. Well, as you know, we are going to be flying to LSU while also be monitoring a bowl game, which means that we're flying out of New Orleans Sunday morning. So as we did in Orlando a couple years ago, we're going to go straight from Death Valley to the New Orleans airport. But they closed the press box 2.5 hours after the game. There's
Yeah.
no shot. We don't even start thinking about being done with our second. I'll barely get my 2 post-game stories up, which you'll be able to read on OklahomaSoonersOnSI.com, regardless of what happens. So basically, we don't have a hotel room to go back to Saturday night because we're going to go straight to the airport. We're
Flights
going
at
to get,
6 a.m.
yeah, we're going to get
Smart.
shooed out of the press box. So we're gonna have a couple of options. I did pitch to Hoove doing a car pod with a little tripod up in the dashboard on the way back from Oxford. He nixed that one. I'm gonna pitch that again. We might airport pod. I'm gonna be voting against that just because if you think our pods are off the rails, usually just get us at 4:15 after I'm pissed going through TSA, and we'll see how good that podcast is.
Yeah.
So basically, stay tuned. We'll tweet out. However, we're gonna whenever we drop the post game pod, whenever that's gonna happen. But the certified fresh post game pod will be certified fresh from somewhere. It just might be on a stretch of highway from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. Who knows? So bear with us. We apologize. And then also we might have to get back together and record another addendum because now Sunday is going to be very busy. We're going to get a bowl announcement. As it stands right now, it looks like Gasparilla Bowl or maybe a lower bowl. The SEC has 8 official tie-ins on top of the college football playoff. There are 13 SEC teams that are bowl eligible. That could be 14 if Auburn upsets Alabama in the Iron Bowl. So Oklahoma could be a pool team, as it's called, which means that they could go a bunch of random places.
Mhm.
If they lose, if they win, they might go all the way up to the Vegas Bowl or something like that. We'll have all that for you Sunday. So maybe we'll get back together and give you an extra 15 minutes. Who knows? So the podcast will come when the podcast comes. It'll be to you by
Yeah.
Monday. Okay.
Brian, don't forget too. We might be having an emergency podcast early next week to announce a new offensive coordinator. We're probably going to have a podcast at some point next Wednesday, I would think, National Signing Day. So yeah, stay tuned, man. Podcasts are coming at you fast and furious.
Yeah, be sure that the best way to make sure you're on top of all of that is follow us on Twitter, obviously, at Sooners on SI, at Johnny Hoover, at _Ryan Chapman. We will obviously tweet that stuff out as soon as it comes. Follow the podcast, just Sooners on SI Podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, all that stuff. Or if you're a YouTuber, John Hoover Media, just subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's a little bell up there. If you click that bell, it'll just notify you when Hoove starts posting stuff. So you'll get all of that. But yeah, it'll be a busy, busy week. A bunch of like 15, 20-minute pod segments as opposed to our normal hour and a half, state of the state on that stuff. But anyway, that's all ahead of time. In a little bit, we're going to link up with Zack Nagy. He does a great job. He's the publisher of LSU Tigers on SI. We're going to break down from the LSU perspective everything that they're doing, how they're going to try and stress Oklahoma, all that fun stuff. But the big question of the week, John, you are a head football coach. You win a massive game that alleviates all the pressure off of you for the rest of this year, gives you recruiting momentum, all that stuff. And your kiddos come up to you after the game and say, we're going to go with our friends and spend $94 at a fast food restaurant to celebrate deep into Sunday morning. My question to you is, what fast food drive-thru are you rolling through?
There's only one. Am I right? There's only Taco Bell. If we're talking about 11:30 on a Saturday night in Norman, Oklahoma, there's only one, and it's Taco Bell. I'm not risking the scene or the atmosphere at Whataburger that late at night. What'd you say? What was your slogan? Think outside the bun.
Yeah,
I'm proud that he thought outside the bun and took his lovely daughters to Taco Bell for $94. I thought about that when he said that on Monday. I'm like that side, and that's like, if there's 3 menu boards, you could order those 2 menu boards, one of everything, and get out for less than $94.
Well, and not anymore. And I love Taco Bell, so this is not a criticism. This is just firsthand experience. If you get any of the specialty items, you're not getting out of there without $5 minimum. If you go quesadilla, it's going to be a little bit more. If you get into the cantina menu, then you're kind of taking your life into your own hands. Now, I'll be hand up, fully honest. Monday night, I'm at player interviews, turning and burning video, and Hoove is the one that is, along with our guy Dakota, listening to the coach's show, making sure, just mining for content, doing the Lord's work over there. All I saw is the tweet, Brent Venables, $2, $94, Taco Bell. And I was like, hell yeah.
Here we go.
When we find out, you go back and I listened to it on Tuesday morning on my way from radio to the press conference, and it's Brent Venables like, it's my daughter and her friends, and we had 2 cars. And I was like, well, $94 is way less impressive. That just sounds like 2 full cars, 2 full like Suburbans or something like that. So we had
he did say we got one. He did say we got one of everything.
Yeah, one of everything. I also appreciate that Brent Venables clearly does not spend much time in a Taco Bell line talking about he got the crunchy stuff in the tortilla that was cheesy. Now, a lot of people's minds went back to the crunch wrap. I would like to stand up and say that man experienced a cheesy gordita crunch.
Yep.
I don't know if it was for the first time, but I would say you give me all the fast food spots in Norman. We're not In-N-Out division, not going through Coney Island or up in the 918 or something like that. But if you just give me the Norman group of fast food spots, I think the cheesy gordita crunch might be the single best, just one menu item. And I got to say, Brent Venables is just taking a page out of the Sooners on SI book. Where did we end up? Yep. On our way out of Auburn, Alabama, after Oklahoma seals a big victory at the end of September? It was you, it was me, and it was the great Jesse Crittenden in that Taco Bell drive-thru.
We were smashing some Taco Bell, just like Brent did.
I don't think that's what we called it, but we were smashing some Taco Bell. All right, seriously, Oklahoma, huge win over Alabama. Brent Venables had a little spunk, had a little spice to a little good nature to him in the Tuesday press conference, as you would expect. The awards have rolled in, whether it be season-long or weekly. Let's start with the season-long stuff real quick, then we'll get into the SEC Player of the Week stuff. Zach Alley, he's been named. Was that a Broyles semifinalist, by the way?
No. That was their first list. So that was the Broyles Award watch list.
Okay, so that was
65 guys are on it right now, so congratulations.
Oklahoma defensive coordinator. You got Danny Stutzman, who made it to the Butkus Award finalist list. Well-earned, well-deserved there.
Yeah, should have been on it last year.
Yes, should have been, at the very least, should have been a semifinalist last. I mean, that kind of coincided a year ago with him getting hurt against Kansas and then Oklahoma State. That injury rolled through, and it was just poor luck for him there. And then you got Fabechi Weewu. He is your SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. The X-Man Xavier Robinson was honored, I believe, as well. No Eli Bowen honor for the SEC, which I get it. There was a lot of stuff happening. Xavier Robinson was excellent. Excellent. If I were picking just one freshman from Oklahoma's roster, I probably would have gone Mr. Bowen, the $1,000 man. But that's neither here nor there. Brent Venables is your Bear Bryant Coach of the Week.
Don't forget our Mason Thomas, Defensive Lineman of the Week.
Yes, our Mason Thomas, your SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. Bear Bryant, Alabama's Bear Bryant. The award that bears his name, the Coach of the Week, that goes to Brent Venables for beating Alabama. Fun stuff there.
I love the irony.
Are your Cheez-It Team of the Week? Is that the Cheez-It Bowl that does that?
No, just the Cheez-It sponsors the FWAA's weekly vote. Gotcha. The All-America Selection Committee gets a vote on who the best team is and who had the most amazing play. I can't think it's the Pop-Tarts play of the week or something like that. So, it's just Cheez-It and the Sooners. For the 8th time in their history, I think it's been going since like 2004, are the Cheez-It National Team of the Week for beating Bama. That's pretty good.
As I've always said, following the footsteps of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who were that team a couple weeks ago for beating the Miami Hurricane. And then Kip Lewis is your Ryan Chapman's misunderstood question of the week, as we sit down in the post game and I just ask him, hey man, what do you have against the state of Alabama? And he clearly was like, oh God, media training, Alabama's a good football team. And I was like, dude, you pick 6 against Auburn, we're having the fun, all that stuff.
Well, I found out with Brent Venables this week. He didn't know Clemson was in the city of Clemson. He didn't even know it was in the state of South Carolina. There are people out there who don't know that Auburn is in the state of Alabama.
That's true. I would have hoped that Kip would have known that as he was there. I mean, I'm sure his thing is like, I get on a bus, I get on a bus. I don't know where I'm playing a game.
Right.
This is Dr. Seuss. ESPN put it out there. 7 million people on average watched Oklahoma and Alabama, by far the biggest game of the week. 7.7 milli at its peak, as you would expect.
I thought there were at least 2 million down on the field with me.
It certainly looked like it. Jack Snarl talked about it. And Danny Stutzman's jersey was never really lost the whole time. It was just a miscommunication. It was in the equipment room under some towels. As you would expect, you romp Alabama 24-3, and all of this stuff comes flooding in.
What a crazy week for Oklahoma football. This was a week that Oklahoma fans, and certainly the program, Joe Castiglione, so on and so forth, Brent Venables, have been pointing to, have been looking at. When that schedule came out, it was, senior night against Alabama. Oklahoma Sooners get to play Alabama Crimson Tide in their first year in the SEC. How wonderful is that? We're all excited about it. And then it comes around and they're like 5-5 and Alabama's on a 3-game heater. And it's like 14-point underdog. What? So I totally get there's a combination of the fans being overly excited about being in the SEC, hosting Alabama in their first season, and then beating Alabama, not just beating them, but beating them down, dominating them at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So put all those things together, and the fact that they were on a 4-game SEC losing streak, had really crapped the bed at Missouri 2 weeks earlier. The fan base was just absolutely starved for something good to happen, something great to happen. And it happened. And I was standing down there on the wall where I am most post games, most at the end of most games, standing down there at the wall in the south end zone. And all of a sudden I turn around and look, and there's a bunch of feet like dangling in front of me. And I'm like, uh-oh, I think they're getting ready to rush the field. And I look again, and there's it's about 10 deep. And they're just waiting for the clock so they can jump over the wall. And I said, I'm going to go stand by the goalpost because I know those are not going to break, because I know they have the collapsible kind. And so I got myself to a safe position, and here they came. Boom, boom, boom. The fan base was just absolutely starved for that moment, Ryan. It was I've seen complaints about we're a blue blood and we're Oklahoma, we win championships. Okay, yeah. When's the last time you won a championship? the same time you won or the same time you last rushed the field. So I say celebrate. I say enjoy it
Yeah, and I think too.
and pay the fine.
We see it. Pay the fine twice. We see it across college sports too. Rushing the field for whatever reason just become like even more of a thing. It's never not been at least as I've been
Yep.
alive, right? It's never not been a thing, but now like Arizona State has rushed the field twice this year, and I know
Right.
that it's not Oklahoma. I get that, but I'm just saying you win a big game as a big underdog. Like if Oklahoma had beaten Missouri, I don't think they rushed the field against Alabama type thing, but
Right.
it was just so pent up. And you talk about
Mm-hmm.
the emotion of senior night from the players' perspective, the emotion of everything this team has gone through on the field. You wrote in, I think it was your one big thing on Friday about Brent Venables deserving some grace of everything he's going through, and the Venables family is good, all that stuff. It was just kind of an outpouring, and to a certain extent too, like you mentioned, it was Oklahoma's first FBS win since they beat Auburn at the end of September, right? No one's beating their chest about the main game. I joke about how sports coverage and political coverage is actually like very similar at times. The difference is we get to have fun as opposed to getting yelled at for like deep held stuff. Uh, all the time when a new person's elected president, everyone's always rushing out to be like, and this is the day that so and so finally became president, all that stuff. I felt like for me, I was looking at it, I was like, this is the day that Oklahoma SEC, it's fully there. They
Yep.
went, and one of the rites of passage is going to the Plains and playing at Auburn. One of the rites of passage at SEC play you'll see this weekend is a night game in Death Valley. Another one though is getting to go toe to toe with an Alabama or a Georgia, and for Oklahoma to go toe to toe with Alabama. The way that game happened, where they played what you would consider a very SEC game plan, right? Just line up, screw the forward pass. You're just going to
Mm-hmm.
play smash mouth football and beat them up and down the field. And that's how it happened. It was just kind of an outpouring of the season that was a joy of almost, hey, Brent Venables might be the guy. He's someone we've talked about a lot that I think everyone in the fan base really likes Brent Venables, the person, and wants it all to work. It would be an incredible story of the guy who helped resurrect Oklahoma football alongside Bob Stoops, then comes back and propels it into a new era, all that stuff. It was just a good night in Norman, and I'm not begrudging anyone. Now,
Yeah.
here's the thing. When you looked at the schedule, John, you didn't just go Alabama senior night. You said Alabama at LSU back to back. That's an SEC schedule. And now the key is going to be, and I think that this is probably a kind of a talking point, is was this game a moment in time, as in all the emotion of senior night, OU played above its shoulders, all that stuff that happens in college football? Or is this game going to get looked back upon as a turning point? Is
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma going to show, even if they don't win this weekend, if they go and play a close game and lose like a 24-21, but they were able to run the football again, they were able to successfully contain a pretty explosive LSU passing attack, and in the end, it was just kind of a low score and stuff like that? Or do you see the turnover fiesta, all that? We'll dive into the matchups and all that, but a big storyline this week is the pressure release is there. But now Oklahoma can't just ride off this success. It's something the players talked about on Monday night. You celebrate, then you're on to the next. Something Brent Venables talked about. He was excited about how locked in everyone was on Monday during practice. That's the next big test, is can you carry some type of momentum to Death Valley, regardless of if you actually win the game or not?
Yeah, that's the game prediction for this week, right? What's your score prediction? Well, my actual prediction is whether this was a one-off or if it's like you said, the beginning of something. And you know, we have to guess at it because frankly, what I saw coming out of Columbia, Missouri, the last 2 minutes of that game, right? When you were ahead and then you had a chance to go to overtime and you still found some way to lose it. Coming out of that, going into Alabama, I said, this team's done. They've got no chance. Well, what did they do? They turned everything around 180 degrees, faced their problems head on, changed the game plan, made a couple of tweaks to the lineup, got the freshmen in there. It was a culmination of a lot of things that happened last week. And the question now is, do they continue that? Do they stay on that track? And it's easier said than done, I should say, than to just say, okay, we're going to do this now. LSU's got something to say about that. LSU, I was just looking at their playmakers. They've got some really good players. Got some good players on the defensive line. Got some good players at wide receiver. Got some good players at running back. They've got some good players at a good player at quarterback. So, and they've got a coach who, with 311 career victories, is the current active NCAA college football coaching victory leader right now. He leads the nation with 311 career wins. So he's a heck of a coach. And he's got, as Brent Venables said Tuesday, an all-star staff. So, yeah, can they continue that? That's up to them, but it's also up to LSU. We'll see.
Yeah, it'll be one of the big questions, and we'll talk about it a little bit with Zach Nagy here in a second. And really, at the close of the show, is since Seth Luttrell was fired, you've seen that this offense does have an identity. It was able to run the ball in the first half against Ole Miss. It was able to run the ball in spots against Missouri, and you saw that left side of Oklahoma's line, the pair of redshirt freshmen. You saw Troy Everett, Vechi Weewu, or Eddie Pierre-Louis in kind of small spurts, and then Spencer Brown. Those guys, 4 of which can come back next year. They showed that they can hang with one of the great defensive lines in the SEC. Probably not the best defensive line they've seen this season. That Alabama group, I'd go with either Tennessee or South Carolina. You could, depending on the morning, you could probably go either way with me on that. They're not playing one of the best defensive lines in the SEC this week. LSU's defense is not bad. It's not a bad group, but I think it's the worst defense they've played in SEC play. I would take Auburn's unit over them, and certainly Tennessee, Texas. It might be interesting between LSU and Missouri, the pair of Tigers that aren't Auburn, I guess, to see what they go with there. But that's going to be one of the grand questions. Something that Oklahoma didn't have to deal with a week ago that they're going to have to deal with on Saturday night, though, Hoove, is the emotion, the energy, all of that was wind in the sails of Oklahoma because they were playing at home. They're now taking what was a phenomenal atmosphere inside Gaylord Family Oak Memorial Stadium and flipping it to the most difficult atmosphere in the country. Tiger Stadium, Death Valley. Brent Venables was asked about that, and he said basically everyone he's talked to, coaching profession, people who he loves, people whose opinion he values, they've all said it's Death Valley at night, number one, no question. We've seen Oklahoma play well on the road as far as communication, stuff like that. They certainly handled the Auburn experience really, really well. What do you think they're going to do, though, with a senior night in Death Valley ready to try to eat them alive a little bit?
It's going to be a major challenge, especially with the number of players that are injured. We see that Brendan Thompson's probably going to be added to that list of wide receivers that are out. Who knows for the rest of the season, which is one game, or is it include the bowl game? What's the passing game going to look like? Do they need a passing game when they throw it 50 times and run it? I'm sorry, when they run it 50 times and throw it 12 last week against Bama? Do they even need to throw the football? How many sacks can LSU have if there's no passing attempts, right? But basically, if you're Oklahoma and you're going to go on the road and you're going to try to beat 102,321, I think is the official capacity. If you're going to try to defeat that whole atmosphere, which Oklahoma has done before in the past, in 2015 they go on the road, 102,000 at Tennessee. Baker Mayfield wills that game back toward Oklahoma. 102,455 in that game. Baker Mayfield goes on the road, his first big start as a Sooner, and wins it. His last big road start, non-conference wise, 109,000 at Ohio State in September of 2017. Baker Mayfield had a huge game in that game as well to will Oklahoma back to a victory. He goes and plants the flag at Ohio Stadium. What I'm getting at is I think you're going to need Jackson Arnold to do something very special. All right. I don't know if he's going to throw 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and another one in overtime like Baker did at Tennessee. I don't know if he's going to, have a great second half like Baker did in Columbus, but he's going to have to do something special. He's the quarterback. He rushed for 131 yards last week. He's going to have to, at some point, make a spectacular play to quiet that crowd down. And, they're getting all throaty. It's 4th and goal, or they're coming off the 1 yard line or something, and the crowd is crawling up his backside, right? He's going to have to do something to quiet them down, to kind of take their soul a little bit. And, if that happens, if Jackson Arnold can do that at a crucial time of the game, I think Oklahoma has a really good opportunity to perhaps win this game.
Yeah, I think as long as the turnover battle's within one, I think everything's going to be there for Oklahoma. We'll dive into at the end kind of the unique nature of this is kind of strength on strength, weakness on weakness, and the game within the game and all that stuff. But Jackson's not going to have to do it alone. The Oklahoma rushing attack is going to be the key, right? That's the identity of this group. And he's had a new star emerge right beside him in Xavier Robinson. One of the big questions has been, where the heck was this guy, right?
Yeah.
Busts open a 40-yard run. Then he has the 18-yarder right
Touchdown.
before halftime. That was the moment that you said, Oklahoma could beat Alabama. Xavier Robinson was key on that last drive that gobbled up nearly 7 minutes. And it feels like we did get a little bit of answers here on this one. We talked on radio to Danny Sutsman on Monday, and he talked about how Xavier Robinson just flat out fumbled the ball a lot during fall camp, that's when you get decided if you're going to be in the 2 deep or on the scout team. And when you fumble a lot like that, you're going to get filtered over to the scout team. He then said, hey, like as people got injured, Xavier Robinson was used at like tight end, at receiver, at running back. He was making impressive catches. He was running through tackles. So it's not a shock to Danny Stutzman. And then you go into Monday night with Brent's coach's show Tuesday. In the press conference, Brent talked about a couple of things, right? First off, in the spring, he said he basically had the same transition that a lot of true freshmen have in the spring, which is just tough, getting adjusted to college, really learning what it is to know the playbook. And for Xavier Robinson, something he talked about with us too, he was a little bit overweight, so trying to cut back and all that stuff. And then he goes over to scout team. He keeps working as the injuries mount. He's getting a chance to move over from scout team as he's come on strong. And he's just kind of run with his opportunities. So this is a situation where this doesn't feel like one of those, how the heck did this happen? Once you hear, hey, he was a fumble machine in fall camp and didn't really know the playbook and all that stuff, and now he's clearly got it back on. You can see how that happens, but I don't think anyone thought that Xavier Robinson, even the most guys high on Xavier Robinson coming to Colorado Albert, was going to be running through tackles and making Alabama look like those defenses in Oklahoma high school. That's how the Alabama defense he was running through.
Yeah, right. So the way Brent explained it was he came in from the off season. He comes in early and rolls in January, but he comes in and he's a little overweight, and he doesn't have a good winter conditioning. He doesn't have a good grasp of the playbook in the spring, and then in the fall he fumbled. So you put all those things together, of course he's not going to play, right? There's a couple of things Brent has talked a couple of times about. It reminds him of Quentin Griffin, which I find fascinating. At first, Brent was thinking that Quentin came out of redshirt in the 2000 season. Was actually, he talked about it and got corrected by, I think, Teddy and Toby. Said, oh, yeah, that's right. No, it was 99. It was 99. So he came out of redshirt in 1999 and played in the final 4 games of the season. All right. Those 4 games that Quentin Griffin came out of redshirt were a 37-0 win over Oklahoma State, 31-10 win over Iowa State, a 38-28 loss at Texas Tech, and a 44-7 win over Oklahoma State. He came out of redshirt to play in those games. They needed somebody, but and of course he played in the bowl game as well against Mississippi. He ended up with something like almost 300 yards rushing in the regular season, 86 yards in the bowl game. The guy had almost 600 yards in the last 5 games of his true freshman season. So very much like Xavier Robinson, coming out of redshirt, because Brent told us going into Missouri 2 weeks ago, yeah, he's going to redshirt. Well, he's not going to redshirt. He's going to end up being the best running back on your roster of the last 4 games of the season. Now, here's the difference. Quentin Griffin could play those 4 games in 1999, and his redshirt was burned. Rules have changed. Xavier Robinson could have stopped at 4 games, and he would have maintained his red shirt. I don't think red shirts matter as much as they used to. With guys jumping to the NFL and the transfer portal and so on and so forth, red shirt is not even a badge of honor anymore for kids who do it because they They're not going to be there 5 years. Most of them are not going to be there 5 years. So there's a little similarity there between him and Quentin Griffin, X and Q, which is cool. But there's also a little similarity. I'll see if you can follow me here with this one. Samaje Perine. Remember him? Now here's the difference. As a recruit, Oklahoma recruited 2 running backs that year. Samaje Perine and then 5-star Joe Mixon. Right? So everybody was focused on watching Joe Mixon. Everybody's like, this is the best recruit. This is the guy that's going to, be the little engine that drives the train for the next 3 or 4 years for Oklahoma. He's the best running back recruit we've had since Adrian Peterson. All that stuff was said. And then he gets in trouble, gets suspended for the season. And what comes of it? Samaje Perine comes of it. Samaje Perine, the 3/4-star from, where's he from? Pflugerville, Texas, or New Braunfels or something like that. He was an afterthought in the recruiting process. They got their 5-star, and then they also got this kid from Texas. That's what Xavier Robinson reminds me of a little bit. Is they got Taylor Tatum, ranked the #1 running back in the country, most explosive, dual threat. We've all written about it. 2-sport, catches the ball, runs the ball, explosive, plays baseball, all that stuff. And by the end of the season, we're sitting here going, why hasn't Xavier Robinson played more? This guy that was kind of an also signed local kid, big running back from Midwest City, Carl Albert. And by the end of the season, who's the one that's the actual star of the show? It's the second guy. It's the other guy. It's the spare. So I just find parallels like that kind of interesting.
No, I think that's a good one. I think Brent actually, I think he knew it was the 99 season. I think that in Brent's mind, Teddy was just at Oklahoma from like 1999 to 2007.
Yeah.
Because Teddy was the one being like, dog, I only showed up in 2000. I was still in high school in 99. So I think that Brent had his year right on Quentin. It was just that he was like, oh, Teddy was watching him. And Teddy's like, no.
I was still in high school. Fort Gibson High School, coach.
I wasn't. Don't worry about it. No, but it's been fascinating to see as those guys have rolled through, and it just shows like college football. I also think too, something that like Taylor Tatum was the top rated running back, but he was also like a 4-star and something. Like it's not like when you talk about top rated running back, Taylor Tatum's not Adrian Peterson. I don't think anyone expected him to be Adrian Peterson. That kind of thing. I just think it was a down year for running backs, maybe. As far as the recruiting rankings go. But I mean, here's the thing for Xavier Robinson. Things that he's doing that we haven't really seen. It took until the Ole Miss game for Javonte Barnes to run through arm tackles, things like that. Xavier Robinson's done that immediately. It took Taylor Tatum still hasn't figured out how to hold on to the football. The closest Xavier Robinson's come to fumbling is when he was stretching across the goal line and diving and contorting his body, and even then he cleared it. He made it. Xavier Robinson's got sure hands out of the backfield. Even the little bobble, he's been able to catch it, take a shot, not fumble it, stuff like that. He's doing all the little things that Oklahoma hasn't really had at running back since Eric Gray a couple of years ago, as far as a guy like that. So should be good. Excited to see what Xavier Robinson can do against LSU. The other guy that kind of got high praise, slipped at the very end of the Brent Venables press conference, was Kip Lewis, the author of the Kip 6 Part 2, kind of asked about, okay, hey, Danny's your Butkus finalist. We all know Danny. What about Kip? And Brent Venables talked a lot about, he can come back, work on his body, but the way that he plays, he has no ceiling was one thing. And he anointed Kip Lewis as he's probably our next great one. I don't think you have to say next. He is great right now, and he's a perfect kind of yin to Danny Stutzman's yang and all that stuff with the physicality and stuff like that, and then what Kip does sideline to sideline. We're going to get ahead of ourselves here. If we get to bowl season and Danny Stutzman decides to opt out, because it would make sense, right? It's not a big time college football play. He certainly could stay and play. He was non-committal either way, or he just said basically, we'll get to that when we get to that. But I'm excited to see what Kip Lewis is going to look like when he is kind of leading the show, because I think he's got the potential to be maybe not like Butkus Award next year, but who knows? The way that Kip Lewis plays, to put a limit on him, I think would be dumb.
something Brent said about him, a couple of things that Brent said about him on Tuesday jumped out to me. He said he's got this is to me, this is the ultimate compliment. He said he's got the chance or the ability to be a 3-down linebacker. He is a 3-down linebacker. He doesn't come off on passing downs, right? He doesn't just come in and blitz the quarterback. He doesn't just come in and run blitz or fill the gaps. He's a 3-down linebacker. Something else that Brent said is he's my juice whisperer. And immediately I thought, Brent Venables is juicing, because he just had Taco Bell. He probably needs a good juice cleanse.
Well, he did talk about the smoothies. Maybe
Yes, he did. That's what got me about the Taco Bell thing was I'm like, wow, he's really celebrating because he doesn't eat that kind of food very often. He doesn't eat greasy food. He doesn't eat mystery meat. Brent's very healthy. I don't know if you noticed. But he said he's my juice whisperer. He said, when I'm mad at the world and I'm feeling sorry for myself, he's just got a light inside him. He's smiling. Coach, man, I got you. He's always coming around at the right time. And he said, obviously, he's a fantastic player. But yeah, a tackling machine, a playmaking machine. We've called him before a ball magnet. The ball just seems to find him.
It makes sense, right? Because it's so funny. He had 2 pick sixes this year, which have been huge, and Kip Lewis has been excellent all year long. He burst onto the scene because him and Deshaun McCullough were making Texas defensive linemen playing offensive linemen look silly a year ago. You know what I mean? Like a guy that's undersized. Brent Venables talked about the unorthodox way that he kind of slips blocks and dives in there, and then he'll up in guys and grab their ankle, stuff like that. He's already shown he can hold up in the Southeastern Conference as a quote unquote undersized guy. So if he can continue that body progression a year from now, again, to put a ceiling on Kip Lewis, good luck. That's on you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it.
Do you know who the other 2 linebackers in OU history are who returned interceptions for touchdowns twice in a season?
Did Jordan Evans do it?
Jordan Evans did it.
And then I do not. Did Calamus get another one?
No, I'll give you a quick hint. Played with Cale Gundy, I believe.
Wow, good luck. That's
How about Joe Bowden? He played like 9 years in the NFL. Joe Bowden was a fantastic linebacker.
Excellent, but a little bit out of we could have named linebackers for a little bit. Now I would have had to keep going.
You know what? Before we jump to Zack,
we also got some OC stuff. So while you Google,
okay, let me Google some Joe Bowden. What's this Joe Bowden obituary stuff? He's not. No, he's fine. Okay. 54 years old, played in 1970. So yeah, he would have played in 90, 92 era. So yeah, he was at the end of the Gary Gibbs.
Just before Kelly Gregg, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they were passing ships, I believe.
That's right.
Yes, sorry. That's my a lot of my 90s OU football comes from 2 things. 1, talking to my mom. That's the early part of the 90s. 2, talking to Kelly Gregg. That's the late part of the 90s.
Yeah, shoot. I think he played 89, 90, 91, something like that. So Joe Bowden was a fantastic linebacker. And then he played 9 years in the NFL for Houston, Tennessee, and Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah. If Kip stays on that trajectory, I think he'll be A-okay. A-okay. Indeed. Real quick, one last thing before we get over to Zack. The big other thing that continues to loom is the offensive coordinator questions. Frankly, because, John, I expect that the next time I'll talk to Brent Venables will be obviously post-game LSU. Then after that, there will be like a little teleconference on Sunday for whatever bowl game that they've got, which is great for the bowl game, not really great for getting anything of substance when it comes to that kind of stuff. Then after that, the next time we'll talk to Brent Venables will be probably this time next week, next Wednesday, you would assume, somewhere in there, for early signing day, that signing period window opening. I would bet an offensive coordinator is probably hired by then and announced and official and all that stuff. So Brent Venables got a couple of different offensive coordinator questions. Barry Trammell asked him if it's easier to rebuild an offense than a defense in today's day and age, if you just get an OC and a quarterback. George Stoya asked him what he was looking for schematically and if that's changed because of how Oklahoma beat Alabama. I think that the heart of that question, I don't want to speak for George, is probably that a lot of There's a lot of Ben Arbuckle buzz out there, who obviously comes from an air raid background. Now, Arbuckle, if you watch Washington State, has a lot of really interesting run concept stuff. It looks a lot like, frankly, what you'd imagine a Bill Bedenbaugh team. There's a lot of counter, a lot of stuff like that coming from that Texas Tech group. If that's changed anything at all. And then you obviously who've asked him what kind of person. So I think we kind of hit all three. How fast you want this thing turned around? What scheme do you want? What kind of human do you want? I think we hit all that on Tuesday with Brent Venables.
Yeah, I got an answer I didn't expect. He said, "We don't need a choir boy."
Was that a shot at Zach Sanchez?
Was it, no, was that a shot at himself? He said, we want someone who aligns with our values and beliefs, but we don't need a choir boy. You know what I mean? I mean, Brent's got this kind of the way that he wants things done, but at the same time, he knows they got to win some football games. So I don't think they're going to hire an axe murderer or anything like that for offensive coordinator. But
he just wants a dog. I think that's what he wants.
He wants a dog. DAWG dog.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. It could be, Ryan, that we have some news break on that on Monday. And you're right, Arbuckle is the kind of the, I don't want to call him flavor of the month, but he is a name that has gotten a lot of momentum in this early coaching search. So possibility that somebody gets named on Monday, which is really strange to me because Brent doesn't have time to interview an offensive coordinator right now. He probably got some done during the open date, but not everybody was available to talk to him, right, that he wanted to talk to during OU's open day. So you talk about a college football coach and their tight schedule and they're so busy and they, 20 hours a day and all this stuff. I don't know when he's supposed to interview a guy, but it's possible that we could have some news on Monday. Also possible it could be Tuesday, because they want to be able to assure that class that's coming in, that 2024 recruiting class, or I should say the 2025 recruiting class. They want to be able to assure those guys, especially the offensive players, this is your offensive coordinator. Here's some pictures of him. Here's some video of what he does. Don't sign with anybody else tomorrow. Sign with Oklahoma. That's what they're going to be their pitch on Tuesday.
Also, here's his number. We're going to FaceTime you right now.
Yes.
Oklahoma open dates and interviewing for jobs. Name a more iconic duo than those two things: Oklahoma open dates and interviewing for jobs, as obviously Oklahoma's conducting the interviews this time. It'll be interesting. It's kind of been said a lot that the internal date that they have targeted is by signing day, obviously. And a hell of a first week. Whoever the OU offensive coordinator, let's say he just gets named on Monday, whoever it is. You're going to have 48 hours to reassure your 2025 recruiting class to, first off, meet a bunch of those guys, probably have in-depth conversations with them for maybe the first time, depending on what region of the country that guy's coming from. And then you're going to have to circle immediately, flip back around, and okay, we're looking to the future. Now you got to talk to every offensive player on the roster to figure out who's portaling, who's not, try to convince those guys, meet Jackson Arnold, build that relationship. Because the next Monday, December 9th, is when the transfer portal window opens. There's a reason this man's going to get paid $2+ million, and it's to turn around the OU's offense and figure all that out in their first week on the job. Good luck, have fun.
Yeah, the only thing harder than that would be as if Oklahoma had made the conference championship game, right? Think about that. Think about that tight window where you got to turn that thing around. You're still coaching the team to try to win a championship. If you're in a conference championship game, guess what else you're in line for? Probably a college football playoff. So you got all that. You got to hire a guy on Monday, get a class signed on Wednesday, and then the following whatever Tuesday or Wednesday, you start getting your portal guys. You got to have a constant communication with your guys that you don't want to leave through the portal, and then of course there's always guys that are knocking on your door saying, "Coach, can I get a couple minutes? Because I know you don't want me here, but I've got another opportunity. I'm going to leave." So those guys that they kind of want to leave through the portal, they're on their way out as well. So man, I can't imagine the timeline. And they talked about moving National Signing Day up 2 weeks to deal with to help the coaches with the timeline. I think it made it worse. I don't think it helped. I think it made it worse.
Well, the caveat being, if you're in a conference championship game, Seth Luttrell's not fired and you're not doing any of this. So
Probably true.
Like the only way you're doing that is if your coordinator gets hired away from you, which we'll see what that means. Like if Tulane gets themselves into a college football playoff, Craddock is a popular name, not just around Oklahoma. He's been mentioned with the Florida State job. He's been mentioned now with the Wisconsin offensive coordinator job. John Sumrall, the head coach at Tulane's, now being mentioned with the North Carolina head coaching opening. That's one of the big questions I have about the new playoff is way more teams are involved. What does that do for coaching changes, all that fun stuff? I don't know what that will hold, but yeah, Ben Arbuckle, Craddock, Mullen, we've talked about it. Cade Bell's name at Pitt's been thrown around for Oklahoma. Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech. I'll be interested to see, like, if it ends up being like a Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech, I think Georgia's follow-up of how you beat Alabama, did that change your thought on what kind of offense you need? I think that there's a pretty solid through line there with what Georgia Tech did, which is basically run a triple option the last month because Haynes King's shoulder injury has popped back up. But anyway, that's
I just know it took us about 6 weeks to hire Carson.
Yes, it did. It did take that long.
And we got the right guy for the job.
And that's with the media interviews, all that stuff. He is still moving around. I think he's technically back in Norman right now.
No, he's back in Colorado right now. He'll be back in Norman tomorrow.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, he's in Norman today. I can tell you that.
Oh, he is.
Yeah. Okay. He'll join us Wednesday next week. He'll be in Baton Rouge with us, so he'll be on the postgame pod again. You'll meet him in full probably next week because we're not going to make him hop on while he's trying to move crap around. That would be insane. Well, the only people that are insane enough to do all this stuff are coaches with the calendar that they deal with. So we're going to dive into OU LSU first. Let's break down the Tigers. So we're going to take a quick timeout. On the other side, we'll be joined by Zack Nagy from LSU Tigers on SI. Great info. We just conducted that interview. Pull the curtain back. So a ton of great info, X's and O's, all that stuff. Then on the other side of that, it'll be back to Hoover and I, and we're going to, from the OU perspective, what they need to do, all that fun stuff. So a ton of Bayou Bengals next. All right, welcome back in. Let's talk about the Bayou Bengals. It's something Hoover and I have been looking forward to all year long, the trip to Baton Rouge. We got the night game. Brent Venables not happy about it, but we are. And we're joined by Zack Nagy, does a great job, the publisher, LSU Tigers on SI. Thank you for taking some time to break down the Tigers.
No, man, of course. It's been a tough season for LSU to this point, but regular season finale at home, I'm excited to talk about it.
Let's start here before we dive into both sides of the ball. All that we've seen is like the online fans, all that stuff doesn't always reflect the atmosphere in the stadium or certainly the fan base. But what's kind of the temperature with LSU fans on Brian Kelly? I mean, all we saw as LSU and Oklahoma were kind of playing at the same time last week was Vanderbilt scores. It sounds like the student section was not happy. The band was having to drown out some chants, stuff like that. LSU went on to roll. That game wasn't really super competitive at the end. Vanderbilt made it look better at the end. But like, how are LSU fans doing with Brian Kelly? And if there was a path where OU is having some success early, is this thing going to turn on Brian Kelly inside Tiger Stadium?
Yeah, look, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Vanderbilt went out and scored a touchdown on the first play from scrimmage for him. Diego Pavia connects deep, and then they get in the end zone right there in the blink of an eye. And you see that student section saying, chant fire Kelly instantly. They did not skip a beat, and it was the point where it got so loud where, like you said, the band had to kind of tune them out and work from there. So I would never say Brian Kelly's in the hot seat right now. That buyout is too significant. But one thing I will tell you is this fan base is not patient. This fan base is toxic. This fan base is loud, and they are not going to shy away from putting Brian Kelly on the quote-unquote hot seat from their perspective. So it's a unique situation in Baton Rouge. You're obviously regressing in year 3. Brian Kelly went to the SEC title game in year 1. Year 2, you had the offense to win a natty, but your defense was just abysmal, and you're just plugging holes left and right. It's like a sinking ship. Now you're kind of finding yourself in a situation where you're trying to stay afloat one last time, reach 8-4, but fan base here right now is not the biggest fan of Brian Kelly. He's got to go out in the transfer portal and crush it, get some immediate impact guys. And a lot of things that I'm hearing are saying that they're going to go out and get double-digit immediate impact players on the defensive side of the ball only. So we'll see what they make on offense as well. But Brian Kelly's got some decisions to make. We're reaching that point in the season where he's got to make them fast. He's got the regular season finale right here against the Sooners. It'll be exciting to see how he responds.
Zack, I want to ask you about, before we get into the matchups, I want to ask you about Oklahoma being in the SEC. We've asked a few publishers through the weeks, as the weeks have gone along, what the fan bases of the schools that you cover think about the expansion of the SEC, Texas and Oklahoma getting in. Now that we're at the end of the season, Oklahoma's obviously at the end of a very difficult season, a 5-loss season. They just made a bowl game. They just beat Bama. What does everybody think about OU right now in the among the fan base?
Yeah, look, I think it's a super conference now. You got the best of the best in one conference, and they're all competing for one goal, and that's a natty. And I know Oklahoma's obviously had some hurdles to jump over. It's been kind of a roller coaster, but I think you're starting to see them click right now towards the end of the season. We saw them dismantle Alabama last week. I know a lot of the people, us earlier, were kind of saying, well, me, really just in over their head just a little bit. But now it's starting to click. They're starting to hit their stride. They're starting to make things work. So I think a lot of people that are SEC fans are excited to see the expansion. And obviously Texas is cruising right now, but I don't think Oklahoma is going to be too far behind them. I know it'll take a year, 2 or 3 to get there, but I'm excited to see where they're at. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and I know a lot of people are excited for them to come to Baton Rouge this weekend too.
Oklahoma did a really good job last week, kind of caging Milroe, making sure he didn't get out of the pocket. A much different challenge this week is Nussmeier, very comfortable in the pocket and can absolutely rifle it. What have you kind of seen from him as a guy that he's like a unicorn in college football, someone that stayed at one spot, sat behind a Heisman Trophy winner, bided his time, and is now getting a lot of experience in his first, big run through as the unquestioned starter this season.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett's he's a Louisiana native, man. He was born in Lake Charles. This is a guy who bleeds purple and gold. He wanted to be here, and he's kind of waited his turn. Like you said, he had the chance to kind of take the reins there, but they brought in Jaden Daniels, who really took a jump from year 1 to year 2, won a Heisman. So what I've seen from Garrett so far is patience. I think it's really easy to sit back and be disappointed in the result. You're sitting here at 4-3 in conference play. You've lost all chances at an SEC title game, college football playoff, etc. But he hasn't blinked. This is a player who's kind of been through all the trials and tribulations and continues to really thrive. He pieced together his best performance of the season last weekend against Vanderbilt. And I know it's Vanderbilt. It's not Bama. It's not A&M. It's not Florida. You're not playing against teams that are hot. I know I'm contradicting myself because Bama just got crushed. But it really is a matter of him just remaining patient, continuing to work. And I'm excited to see where he goes from here. But this is a player who is confident in his abilities. He has an NFL arm. It's about developing that NFL processor inside of his head. This is a guy who has to beat the mental hurdles here. He's turned the ball over a lot, man. This is a guy who is really having some decision-making problems. The talent is there. He's a guy who can click when he wants to click. It's just about processing, getting that processor up to speed. All signs point to him returning to Baton Rouge next season. I think he can take a significant jump from year 1 to year 2. It's exciting to see what he can do in Baton Rouge. He's a player who loves this program. He waited his time, like you said, and now he's getting ready to reap the benefits sooner rather than later.
Zach, you mentioned Alabama. I wanted to get into that. I love comparing scores. When you say Alabama beats LSU 42-13, Alabama beats Missouri 34-0. Oklahoma probably should have won the Missouri game. Oklahoma did beat Alabama. Oklahoma's going into this game a touchdown underdog, 6.5 underdog. The way that the season has unfolded for LSU, dropped the season opener in Las Vegas to Lincoln Riley, everybody's buddy around here for sure, and USC. But then they won 6 straight, and then they start losing again. Lose 3 straight. It's been just a very uneven season for LSU football. How has that been to cover, and how's that been among the fan base?
Yeah, it hasn't been received well in Baton Rouge. You come to LSU and you have national title or bust aspirations. Will Campbell before the season said that you go to schools and 10-win seasons are good and all, but you come to Baton Rouge and a 10-win season will get you fired. Here you are, your peak. The best that you can do now is 9 wins with a bowl game, 8-4 on the season at best and regular. Win a bowl game, you get to 9-4. So look, it's not been the best season for this program, and it hasn't been received well. You have a team that's struggling, and it's been a roller coaster ride, like you said. You lost in week 1, you come out and you win 6 straight, and then you drop 3 to A&M, Alabama, and Florida. It's been a struggle bus for this team right now, and that 3-game losing streak really sucked the air out of Baton Rouge. And the numbers would showcase that it sucked the air out of this team as well. You look at Garrett Nussmeier, who was a top player in the SEC, number 1, number 2 quarterback behind Jackson Dart. And then you look at the 3-game losing streak, and he was abysmal. They weren't letting him play his style of game. And if you look at the air yards per throw, over that 3-game losing streak, it was 3.3 yards per throw. I mean, they were just making him check it down. They weren't letting him take the top off. So Nussmeier wasn't able to play his game. Run game was abysmal. Defense, you couldn't stop a nosebleed. So it was a difficult stretch for this team. You get a win over Vanderbilt, and now you try to end the regular season with a bang so that you can carry some type of momentum into the offseason, because it's going to be a cold December here in Baton Rouge. a lot of the fans are expecting big time things from Brian Kelly, and he certainly got his plate full moving forward.
It's a pretty fascinating matchup when you look at like LSU offense, OU defense. That's the strength on strength. When you dive into that, though, what LSU does really well is what Oklahoma has struggled with the most, which is those chunk plays down the field, especially in the passing game. Kyron Lacy, Aaron Anderson, and then Mason Taylor just over the middle. What kind of how has Brian Kelly that the group got it to where those guys are going to be so volatile and so aggressive down the field? Because that's the one thing you look at the Auburn game, the Tennessee game on Oklahoma's side of things. It's those big chunk plays down the field. They're not giving up many, but the ones that have been kind of crushing.
Yeah, for Oklahoma, I think that they can utilize explosive plays to their advantage offensively against the defense that's abysmal in LSU. But sticking to the question here for LSU's offense, their offense has just been so unique here, man. Like you're looking at a team that you have Kyron Lacy, who's your true wide receiver one, but inconsistency has plagued him all season. I mean, just from a drops perspective, I mean, he dropped a touchdown on Saturday that could have taken the top off of Tiger Stadium if he really wanted to. He's dropped several balls. He's been inconsistent. So he's going to have to get that together this week in order for LSU to have a chance. When I'm looking at my bold predictions, it was that Aaron Anderson and Kyron Lacy would both accumulate 100-plus total yards. So I'm excited to see if they can do just that. But like you said, man, some games Kyron Lacy will come out and ball. Some games he just won't. Aaron Anderson, to me, has been Mr. Consistent. He's been your really most impressive wide receiver. The jump that he's taken from year one to year two has been fascinating. He's caught over 50 balls this year, 700 total yards, in comparison to 12 catches last year. So he's really clicking. So those are your two wide receivers. They're doing really well. And then you look at a guy like Mason Taylor, who likely will enter the NFL draft and be a top 5 tight end in the draft. He's been a player who catches almost every ball his way. It's like he's got glue on his hands. He's become Garrett Nussmeier's safety net. I mean, every time he's in doubt, he just checks it down to Mason Taylor, and he picks up 7 to 10 yards every play. So offensively, kind of bringing things back here and taking the monologue to a close. Kyron Lacy's been inconsistent. He's got to piece it together. Aaron Anderson's looked the part, needs to have a big game on Saturday. And Mason Taylor won't skip a beat. He's a player who's been fantastic.
Zack, the LSU running game is what I want to ask about. Oklahoma's strength is absolutely stopping the run. I think Alabama found that out. And some other teams, obviously, this year found that out. LSU's running game is I think it's underrated. I think you got a guy like Caden Durham, if he's completely healthy, is a guy that can change a game. And then Josh Williams last week, 2 touchdowns.
Notice how when I talked about the LSU offense, I kept it to the passing game.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say too much about the running game. It's been a roller coaster ride. You'll hear me say that's the third time I've said it since we've been talking. It's been a roller coaster. Some days you have the running game pop off like they did at South Carolina. Caden Durham, a true freshman, pieced together a fantastic game. And I know Caden Durham's a guy that you guys might not want to talk about because he was trending towards Oklahoma for a little bit, popped LSU. I know there's some ties there in the Norman area for him, but nonetheless, Caden Durham is a freshman phenom. I think he's a player who can, in the blink of an eye, change the trajectory of a game. He did that against South Alabama, first play of the game, took it 75 yards to the house. So he's a player who thrives off of explosive plays. Offensive line hasn't done him very many favors this year. The run blocking has been a thorn in this program's side. But nonetheless, Caden Durham has been fantastic when called upon. And then, like you alluded to, Josh Williams, man. He's probably one of my favorite Tigers of all time. He's a player who's gone through everything, a former walk-on to a scholarship player, last guy on this roster who was on that 2019 national championship team. I mean, he's a 6-year senior, so he's looking to go out with a bang on senior night. And I'd look forward to seeing him take a majority of the reps against Oklahoma just because it is his final game suiting up in Tiger Stadium. But he's coming off of a career game. It was his best game against Vanderbilt. I'm excited to see if he can carry the momentum in the running game against Oklahoma this weekend.
Flip it over, that LSU defense you mentioned last year, really just tough unit. Made a bunch of improvements this year. I mean, if you look at the, total defense, passing, rush, all that stuff, about 60s, somewhere in the high 60s, 59th, I think, in total defense. Where has just been the biggest jump for that group as far as taking it from what looked very much like an old school Lincoln Riley team a year ago with Heisman Trophy quarterback and like one of the most worst defenses you'll see to being one of those a defense that's not elite, but a respectable group?
Yeah, I think when you look at this LSU defense from a season ago, you couldn't get worse. I think the only way you could go is up. And Blake Baker's done just that. It's his first year back in Baton Rouge as the defensive coordinator, and he's a defensive mastermind. He's pieced together really good game plans routinely. He doesn't necessarily have the personnel that he would like right now, and it's plagued him. It's made this LSU defense struggle at times, but he's going to continue to get more guys in his system. And I truthfully believe that he's going to get this ship steered in the right direction defensively. Right now, you're not where you want to be. Your secondary is not the talented group that you'd like to have that back there. Your defensive line is kind of just hovering. So you have guys who are kind of just pieces that you can work with, not necessarily uber talented guys. I'm excited to see how they come out this weekend just because it is the final game. But you look at two guys, your defensive end tandem of Savion Jones and Braden Swinson. I'd like to see if they can wreak havoc in the backfield, slow down a guy like Jackson Arnold, slow down the run game with Barnes. I think they can do just that. It's just a matter of them clicking and Blake Baker putting them in a position to be successful. I believe in Baker. It's just a matter of having them want to kind of come out, end the season with a bang. I think they'll want to do just that.
Well, the good news for that secondary is that Oklahoma's wide receivers just all dead. They're just off in a ditch somewhere with various soft tissue injuries, as they've been labeled. One more here. Tiger Stadium. Obviously, Brent Venables got the question about the two Death Valleys as far as all that stuff this week. Oklahoma, I mean, they played in Neyland. They played up in Columbus. So like the numbers as far as, hundreds of thousands, all that stuff. But what is it about this LSU fan base and Tiger Stadium that makes it so special? As Brent Venables talked about, that he talks to everyone and they're like, don't draw the night game down there. Well, what is it about it that is going to have this thing cranked up on Saturday night?
Yeah, it's an unbelievable atmosphere. You're in Louisiana, and a lot of the people in Louisiana like to get liquored up before a game. It is plain and simple. I mean, these people like to go out and tailgate before the games. They walk into that stadium rowdy. It's a fun atmosphere. They're always jumping. Now they've got the lights, the new light show. They got the new speakers, the new video board. They've upgraded the stadium over the offseason, and it's really worked in their favor as well. Brian Kelly's lost one night game since he's been here in Baton Rouge. Of course, it was the recent blowout to Alabama, unfortunately. But nonetheless, he's been nearly flawless in night games in Baton Rouge. So it's just the atmosphere, man. Y'all are going to get to see it for yourselves. I'm excited for you guys to make it down here, but it's a work of art. They do it right in Baton Rouge. I'm excited to see how it'll be in the final game of the year. After Thanksgiving, you'll have people in town. Intrigued to see how it goes, but the stadium, it rocks every single Saturday night, and there's nothing like a Saturday night in Death Valley. The true Death Valley is what I'll say. I'm not an LSU alum, so I'm not biased. So I can specifically say it's a work of art back in Baton Rouge, of course.
I love it. Work of art, Brian. I love it.
You need neck. I want all of the neck, pretty please. That's all I've been looking forward to for 2 months. That's the only thing that's enjoyable this season. Zach, thank you so much for taking out some time, and we look forward to swinging through, linking up with you this weekend.
I appreciate it, fellas. You have a good one.
Thanks, Zach.
Welcome back. Big thank you to Zach for a ton of great info there. And Hoover and I cannot wait to get to Baton Rouge. It's something we've been looking forward to for months and months and months since the season rolled out. But let's dive into it now, finally, from the Oklahoma perspective. Let's start with the OU offense, boss. They look great against Alabama. How much of that, though, of that game plan are you going to be able to carry over? Part of the success that Oklahoma had is that they never were down by more than 3, and from there on out, they were either tied or led the rest of the way. They went through that early adversity, right? The fumble, then the drop pass, touchdown pass by Bauer Sharp that ended up turning into a missed field goal. They never panicked, though, and again, part of that's because they weren't behind. Oklahoma's defense, we'll get into that here in a second, but LSU's offense, another explosive offense. It's not a guarantee that they're not going to be down 7-0 or 10-0 or 10-3 or something like that. But LSU's defensive line, not as good as Alabama's defensive line. LSU's linebackers, not as good as Alabama's linebackers. Whit Weeks is fun. LSU's got some talent on the edge, but they're pretty soft up the middle. Is this a game plan of just ground and pound and throw the ball 12, 15 times? Is that something Oklahoma's going to be able to replicate in Death Valley this weekend?
Yeah, I think if Oklahoma has to throw the ball, or if we're looking back at the stats at the end of the game and Oklahoma has thrown the ball more than 20, 22, 25 times, then we're looking at an Oklahoma loss. I really think that. I don't think they're going to be able to drop back comfortably and throw the football down the field comfortably and receivers get themselves open comfortably. I don't think any of that's going to happen. I think Oklahoma has evolved into a team that has to, not wants to, but has to run the football. And I mean, run it with power, run it out of 12 formation, run it out of 22 formation sometimes. Power, you've seen the diamond backfield or the full house backfield, I call it. You see so many big bodies on the field. And you know what else you've seen? You've seen an offensive line, Ryan, that has become comfortable in its own skin. Coach, please don't ask us to drop back 25, 30 times a game and protect the quarterback. We suck at that. We're not good at it at all. Coach, can we just stay in our kind of crouch position? And can I hit this guy in front of me? And can we create running lanes to open through the defense? That's what we saw last week, and that's how Oklahoma has to approach this week against LSU.
Yeah, I think something that's going to help them too is like this defensive line, not as good as Tennessee's, not as good as Auburn's, not as good as South Carolina's, not as good as Texas, it's not as good as Alabama. It's not bad, but it's the easiest one they faced in SEC play, I think, and that's grading on a curve, absolutely. But you also have to grade the offensive line on a curve, right? If we're going to say that, you got to flip that around and say Oklahoma's offensive line played really well for a half against Ole Miss, played really well for 4 quarters against Alabama, had its moments against Missouri. If you look at what they're trying to do here, this is an LSU defense that they're mid 60s. I've got it right here. If you look at scoring defense, 66, rushing defense allowed, 64th, passing defense allowed, 60th. You look at sacks per game, 30th. So when LSU is able to get teams in third and long, turn them loose, they're successful, but they're 89th in third down defense, which tells me that LSU has not had a lot of success on first down and second down. They're letting teams be in third and manageable. That was something that Oklahoma was able to do. It just gold stars all around against Alabama. Their first negative play didn't come until like 3 minutes left in the third quarter. I think a lot of that had to do with Xavier Robinson falling forward, Jackson Arnold falling forward. So if they can do that, then I absolutely think that this is something they can carry it over. They're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more downfield, which is made more difficult by the expectation that you're not going to have Brennan Thompson. The flip side of that is I don't think LSU secondary is like any good, like at all. I think that their front seven is fine. They've gotten a lot better. I do not think the secondary is good. Now, who does Oklahoma have that can hurt that? I think Bauer Sharp's an interesting matchup as far as not big, deep shots, but can he get 7-8 yards down the field? Same with like a Jacob Jordan. You're going to have to hit probably 125-plus yard play to J.J. Hester. We've seen that in bits and pieces, not consistently. So that's the concern. None of that is consistent at all. But I do think, like, I believe the offensive line has gotten better week over week over week. We've seen the evidence of that in the rushing game. I think it's just going to be on Xavier Robinson, Jackson Arnold, those guys. Whatever the formula is to get there, it was $131 and a little bit over 100. If those two guys can just combine for 175 yards on the ground, however you want to split it, I think Oklahoma, as long as the turnover margin's within 1 on either side, if Jackson Arnold and Xavier Robinson get to $175 combined on the ground, I think Oklahoma wins this football game. I do. Oklahoma's defense is better than LSU's offense, I think.
I think you're probably right, and I think you could throw potentially Javonte Barnes in there as he continues to come back from that. He was a game-time decision last week, ended up not playing. But you got Gavin Sawchuk back. I'm not going to count on Gavin Sawchuk to come in and get 15 carries, obviously, right? That's he's kind of a relief guy now at this stage of his career. But I think you're right. I think that Oklahoma has to get aggressive in their calls. Okay, so they have to maybe this is something that happens during the week of practice and game film and prep and all that. Is you establish this is what we're going to do. We're going to run right at them. We're going to split the middle. We're going to hit the edges. We're going to go full speed. We're going to do that little toss sweep where we think we're going outside, and then we're going to hit the cutback because we've got pulling blockers coming across. If they can establish that during the game, because I think that's going to be their mindset this week, during the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday practice, Thursday walkthrough, whatever. They get at Team Hotel on Friday and do it one more time. That's what they're going to be looking to do. If they can pull some of that stuff off, if they can establish that and get about, like you said, 175, I say 150, 160. I think that's the number that will end up being successful for the ground game. If they can stay away from 3rd and 7, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, if they can stay out of those situations, I think Oklahoma has a chance to control the running game. And you've got to take your hat off to the offensive line for, like I said earlier, the evolution to go from maybe, the talk all season from fans, media, and maybe even a few coaches worst offensive line in Oklahoma history, worst in memory, worst in 20 years, all that stuff. To go from that to rushing for 257 yards against Alabama with 200-yard runners, the first time they've had two 100-yard runners in the game since the Cheez-It Bowl against Florida State. So if they can continue that little surge of momentum, if they can continue that positivity about, especially toward the running game, yeah, I think you're right. I think Oklahoma's got a real chance to win it.
I'm so fascinated by this game because it's strength on strength when it comes to LSU offense, OU defense, then weakness on weakness, LSU defense, OU offense. Then you zoom in a little bit more, and where is LSU weak up the middle? Where is Oklahoma actually been pretty decent, or what they've tried to do? They've tried around strength on strength, whereas Oklahoma's defense, excellent run defense, where does LSU not really even care to do run the ball, whereas Oklahoma had some issues, the vertical passing game downfield. What does LSU want to do just 100% of the time? Throw the ball vertically. It's going to be interesting. Let's start with the good for OU and then flip over to the bad. Oklahoma has done a nice job all year along the defensive line of when opposing offenses have been in obvious passing situations. When R. Mason Thomas can just pin his ears back and not worry about the run and just get after quarterbacks, that's where against Tulane he popped up. That's where he took over the closing stages of that Auburn game after the Kip 6. And that's where he was really, really good in the second half all game against Alabama. John, it's really interesting because every down is an obvious passing situation for LSU, kind of the way that they want to throw the ball. If Oklahoma can just make sure that the LSU's running game doesn't give them a surprise, like not that they're going to run for 300 yards or anything insane, but like just what Auburn was able to do in the second and third quarter, do enough on the ground to keep them in second and medium, third and short. That way you couldn't really guess what was happening. Do you think that R. Mason Thomas can have success going up against Emory Jones there across from Campbell, the big man, the future first rounder, very, very soon future first rounder on the left side for LSU's offensive line?
I think that's the big key is how disruptive Oklahoma's front seven can be, whether that's Kip Lewis coming on a blitz or Danny Stutzman coming on a blitz or whoever, or just generating pressure with those front four guys, or you're starting four defensive ends or your big guys up front in the middle that have been so disruptive all season. Oklahoma's fifth in the nation in tackles for loss, 8.1 tackles for loss per game. I think they're 11th in the country in quarterback sacks. So, yeah. LSU wants to stand back there. Nussmeier wants to stand back there and chuck it deep, look for big shots, big plays. Oklahoma wants to get after the quarterback. So you're talking strength on strength. How does the Oklahoma secondary hold up? What is their place in this equation? I like what Eli Bowen's done so far. I think we saw Des Malone hit some really aggressive coverage last week. Not only coverage, but sticky stuff where he's on a guy and knocks him out of bounds right as he catches it. I think those are your two best corners right now for Oklahoma. And if they're able to maintain what they've done up front, and if those corners can just kind of hang on, you can't expect you can hope for, and I think you should maybe say this is the standard, what Eli Bowen did to Ryan Williams last week, 9 targets, 2 catches, officially 2 catches. Looked like he had 3 catches, looked like he had 2 touchdowns. Say what you want about that call or say what you want about barely stepping out of bounds. But I thought Eli Bowen was fantastic in that realm last week. And if Des Malone can kind of elevate his game a little bit, hang on to those receivers. They got 3 guys right now, Ryan, over 50 catches on the season. Think about that. Oklahoma doesn't have anybody close to 50, and they've got 3 that are over 50. So that's what kind of offense you're talking about having to defend.
Yeah, you look at Lacey, too. We just talked with Zack about his he would know way better than us, right? He's watched every snap of this LSU team this year. Lacey, 6'2", a little bit bigger than Ryan Williams. Anderson, 5'8", a much smaller twitcher guy. As Malone has come back, and Brent Venables talked a couple weeks ago about the fact that he had a groin injury that hampered him a little bit through that middle part of the season. Almost feels a little bit more comfortable to put. Am I a crazy person if you put Bowen on Anderson, live with the highs and lows of Malone against Lacey, let him be a bit more physical and see if Lacey loses the focus? However you want to splice that, I think I'm okay with it. The big question, though, for me is I don't know what answer Oklahoma has for Mason Tyler. It's just going to be I don't know if you want to put Woody Washington in that spot. So you putting Samuel Mosigo out there, you just dropping in the zone a lot and letting Kip Lewis and Danny Stutzman and those guys figure it out. I really think the biggest thing is if you come out of this game and you hold Taylor to 3 catches or fewer for 40 yards or fewer, I think Oklahoma's probably confident that they had a pretty good day defensively.
Yeah, Mason Taylor's really good. He's one of the 8 semifinalists for the Mackey Award. He's the first tight end in LSU history, and they've had some good ones. He's the first one with over 100 catches and 1,000 career yards. He's a good player. He's going to get his. They've got to mitigate that. They can't let him go out and have 8 catches, for 140 yards or something like that. They've got to be able to cover the tight end. Really kind of, Ryan, I hate to say it, but for the first time all year.
Yeah, we've talked so much about a bunch of these really, really, really good wide receivers that Oklahoma's had to play. It's kind of been murderous row. Very, very similar to you look at Oklahoma and what they've done against defensive lines, stuff like that. The funny thing, though, I mean, you look at what he did, 3 catches, 21 yards, and a touchdown in the loss to A&M, 4 catches for 50, but the longest was 26. So he got half of that on 1 catch against Alabama. He had a really nice day against Florida, but that kind of didn't matter. Although that was a game against Florida that if you're a big believer in like success rate and stuff like that, LSU should have won that game. I mean, they were moving the ball up and down. It was just the fact of once they got to the red zone, they couldn't convert. And for me, that's kind of one of the big X factors of this game is LSU, as good as their offense is, John, they rank 89th in red zone offense. And I think a lot of that comes to the fact that they can't lean on the run game in the red zone. That's not really been a consistency for what this group has done. And that, for me, is what this game's going to be about. Oklahoma's defense, it rallied after Ryan Williams was ruled to have stepped out. Alabama, 1st and 10 from the 11, had to kick a field goal. If Oklahoma's defense, LSU's going to hit a couple of shots in this game. The offense is too good. Nussmeier and the offensive line are too good. Can Oklahoma, A, make sure that unlike against, say, Tennessee, that those big plays don't end up dragging you into the end zone? And B, if you can say, okay, we gave them a big play, LSU set up at the 20. If Oklahoma can force field goals, I think that's the other thing. Obviously, the turnovers, I don't even want to talk about it. Duh. Oklahoma can't turn the ball over like that. But if they can force field goals instead of touchdowns, that's the path, I think, paired with that's my 2 things. Field goals over touchdowns, and then get Arnold and Robinson to 175. If those 2 things happen and the turnover margin again is within 1, I think Oklahoma wins this football game. I think that's my 3-point checklist.
Okay. And I know what Zack said, and he knows the LSU team, like you said, a lot better than we do. But Kyron Lacey's got 55 catches, over 800 yards, second in the SEC with 8 touchdown receptions. He's got 300-yard games this season. If I'm Oklahoma, Brent Venables, I'm Zach Alley, I am putting Eli Bowen on him like they did with Ryan Williams last week. He's their most dangerous. I can't rely on somebody else covering him and hoping that Kyron Lacey drops a 50-yard touchdown pass. I know his hands are inconsistent. You can't let a guy that good get through the secondary. I mean, he's got to be covered. So Eli Bowen is my guy to again rise up and play a fantastic game that helps the defense make the difference between winning and losing. Garrett Nussmeier throws the football 30 yards, 40 yards down the field. Kyron Lacey's there. He's got to have somebody there to knock that football down, to contain the catch, or to contest the catch. If he doesn't, if Nussmeier is allowed to throw, he's got the time to get down there and get deep balls off. It's going to be a long day for the OU secondary, and that to me is one of my major keys.
Lacey reminds me of the Xavier Worthy experience, which I don't know what to make of that, though, because Xavier Worthy had massive days against Oklahoma, then he had massive days where he also had key turnovers late. It's so up and down and sideways. It's kind of reminds me of. So we'll all find out together Saturday night, Death Valley. Be there, be square. Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. We'll have everything. We'll have the live blog. Obviously, we'll have as many stories as the great people of Baton Rouge will let me write from the press box, And then I'll flip over to the mobile hotspot and I'll keep writing deep into the night as Hoover drives us from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. That game coverage, win, lose, draw, will roll straight into our post-game coverage Sunday morning, as well as our bowl coverage. Don't forget bowl game announcements. That happens Sunday afternoon. Got to do the playoff first. I wonder, one thing we don't know, typically by about 2-3 p.m., usually if you're a non-playoff team, we know your bowl location. I don't know if that process is going to get slowed down a little bit because of the expanded playoff, or if it'll stay streamlined and the bowl's just like we just have different people to choose from. We'll all find that out together. Is this Sunday is going to be kind of unique. It'll be the first time that we've gotten all that with the new 12-team playoff. So again, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. Wherever the Sooners are going, we'll be there, and we'll let you know Sunday as soon as we know where that will be.
Next Sunday, right?
Yes.
After the championship games.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I forget.
We got ahead of ourselves.
It all condenses together for me. So that'll be next Sunday. That's right, because we're always doing Heisman Trophy stuff. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
This is what happens in our big dumb brains. For my big dumb brain, Oklahoma season's over. As soon as the LSU game's done, we're going to OC search. Thank goodness. I got ahead of myself. I'm sorry. Thank you for that. That's that. Just like Brent Venables trying to get Teddy Lehman at Oklahoma a year early, I'm trying to usher in the bowl selection process one Sunday early.
Yep.
Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com next Sunday will be where that be. So we'll just have a bunch of post-game stuff. It'll be great. It'll be easy. All right. Real quick, before we go over to other things briefly, we do have some recruiting news that has happened since the podcast. Venables gave a big recruiting answer about the jolt that's going to give OU recruiting, and especially as Oklahoma's waiting for that new offensive coordinator. Not going to dive a ton into that because there's a nice story on Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com by me. I did that story. It was up at 6 a.m. this morning. Go read it. But the Sooners did lose their first offensive commit since the Seth Luttrell change of scenery. That was last Thursday. Yes, Thursday evening. Kevin Sperry, the quarterback of the class, he flips to Florida State, which is a weird thing to cover because at face value, anytime you lose your quarterback, that's bad. But Oklahoma and Kevin Sperry weren't locked into each other like your typical quarterback recruit, stuff like that. It seemed like there had been some drift, some space. This is a guy that had committed to play under Jeff Levy, had moved to Oklahoma, had decided to stay and play under Seth Luttrell. And then you have another one that seems like a bridge too far, and he's off to Florida State. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like losing a quarterback, oh, no big deal, stuff like that. But this had been a little bit of time in the works, and it feels like it finally came to a head on Thursday last week as he flips to Florida State.
Yeah, he committed to OU as a freshman, I believe, during the back half of his freshman year. So that's really early, even for, you're expecting a guy to keep his commitment for 3 years, going on, 2.5 years. That's tough. That's a tough ask for any fan base to say that's our quarterback for 2025. They've gotten a quarterback for 2024, 5-star Jackson Arnold. They've gotten a quarterback, 2023. 2024, they got Michael Hawkins, 4-star kid from the Dallas area, right? They keep getting these kids from the Dallas area. And then 2025, Kevin Sperry committed.
And Brendan Zerberg.
From Ohio.
Not from the Dallas area. He was someone that signed. Don't forget.
That's right. Him. That's right. No, you're right. But no, Sperry Sperry's a guy that has been committed for a long time. Like you said, committed to Levy, lost Levy, said, I've met Coach Luttrell. I love Coach Luttrell. Going to stay committed to Oklahoma. Coach Luttrell gets fired. The natural progression is for him to maybe start thinking, I wonder what my place is with whoever the new offensive coordinator is going to be. I wonder what my place is with that person. So it would be natural for him to start looking around, or even not start looking around, but maybe reach out to some people who have expressed a real interest in him. And Florida State's obviously one of those. So congrats to Kevin Sperry and his family. Florida State, again, a lot longer drive. I've talked to Kevin several times over the last couple of years, and they were fired up about. They were so fired up about Oklahoma. They moved from Rock Hill which is a suburb of Dallas, to Oklahoma City. They moved to Oklahoma City, and he played his junior year there at Carl Albert. And they moved back to the Dallas area where it was closer for him to train. He trains there for C4 Sports in Durant, or has trained for C4 in Durant. And he plays for Denton Guyer. Is Denton Guyer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. One of those things. I lost my train of thought for a second. So he's playing in Denton for his senior year. And it just, over the last probably 3 months, 2 months, especially since Luttrell got fired, it has felt like he, like you said, you characterized it perfectly, drifting. He was kind of drifting away from Oklahoma. Oklahoma was drifting away from him. They've got a 26 quarterback, Jaden O'Neal, who's already committed. The part that stinks about Sperry about losing Sperry, is that he was that cornerstone piece at the beginning of the class. They had a 2025 quarterback committed before they had anybody in the 2024 class committed. So that's how much he wanted to go to Oklahoma. That's how much he thought of Brent Venables, and his family, his mom and his dad. When they were talking, he was telling me that one of the reasons that he committed was because his family was getting emotional over the conversations they were having with Brent Venables and, JP Losman and JP's wife, and the whole staff there at OU was really pulling them to Norman. And then, here toward the end of his senior season, he's getting ready to sign the letter, decommit. So that's a big one. Don't think this isn't a big loss. It's a big one. Whether it's his time that he has invested in them, they have invested in him, the emotions, the family aspect that everybody talks about, that's all gone now, and he's going to Florida State.
Yeah, it's just candidly, I don't know if Kevin Sperry was ever going to play at Oklahoma. I mean, next year your quarterback is going to be Jack Starr, Michael Hawkins, or Portal. Sperry's not someone that was in that conversation, and O'Neal's tape is better. Jaden O'Neal's a better quarterback. He's at least in
pretty
high school.
electrifying.
So it'll be interesting. Oklahoma needs to grab a body just to prevent, more than anything, the 2022 situation of you had Dylan Gabriel, and then you just have this weird, especially like a lot of this is going to be to be determined. Who knows? Oklahoma hires an offensive coordinator. Maybe Jack Snarl and Michael Hawkins both love him. They give them a chance to compete. Both those guys stay. You bridge it. You're able to bring O'Neal in with, let's just say Jack Snarl wins the job. Okay. Arnold stays 2 more years. O'Neal bridges. Then you don't have this big gap, or Michael Hawkins, whatever it is. Portal quarterback X, whoever. But for right now, it could get a little haywire for a year. If you miss your quarterback commit, they'll do some work. They're after a couple of guys. We'll let you know if someone commits. Okay. Real quick, before we get at anything else on the football front, before we get into other things quickly.
Nah, just looking forward to some Cajun food this weekend. Even if it's 4 a.m. Sunday morning at a Waffle House or something like that, man, I'm going to get some jambalaya or something.
Waffle House sounds heavenly. We're not going to dive too much into hoops right now, just because, frankly, a lot of the narrative will either be reinforced or change or whatever by the time that this podcast even publishes. It's 2:40 p.m. on Wednesday. At 3 p.m., the Oklahoma women are taking on Duke out in Vegas. That is a top 15 matchup. Duke beat number 9 K-State to set up this thing. Oklahoma, DePaul hung with them for a little bit. Oklahoma turned on the Jets defensively and stopped turning the ball over, and then just crushed DePaul in the second half. That is Wednesday, 3 p.m. I would much rather just wait and then talk about whatever happens in this game next week, because again, it's the first massive, huge test for the Sooner women. The men, I need all 3 games in the Bahamas to kind of figure out what's going on there. Does Bryson Gooding play? Jadon Jones still looks like a little bit away, but they've got Providence at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. If they win that game, in all likelihood, they'll play Arizona on Thursday, which again will tell us a whole lot. I don't know how good or bad Providence is. I feel like if you read too much into that thing one way or the other, we might be looking back like we did last year, going, felt like a huge one at the time, ended up not being. We'll see. So I'm kind of in wait and see mode, but they're out there in the Bahamas. It'll be Providence up first, then either Arizona or Davidson. And then, I mean, who knows who could be on the other side of the bracket? There's so much ifs, ands, or buts. More than anything, by the time we break these 2 games down, it'll already have happened by the time the podcast is out. And B, I kind of want to see the whole body of work before we really dive into that, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no, we'll know a lot more about both of these teams this time next week for sure.
Yeah, my just real quick, 2 biggest questions. What does Fears look like against the best competition he's played? And 2, can Jalen Moore do it night in, night out, night after night after night? He'll get 3 big tests. Those are the 2 things I'll be looking for, and we'll tell you how all that happened next week as we get fully into crossover season with Feast Week in our rear view. It feels like we'll have a lot better, our arms wrapped around what both the Sooner women and the Sooner men will be on the other side of this week. So we'll dive into that. Per usual, though, just be sure you're following us, Sooners on SI on the Twitter machine. John is at John E. Hoover. You can follow me for all my bad Dancing with the Stars takes, as well as the football _ Ryan Chapman as we close the book on that. Be sure and follow the new guy. Show him some love. Carson D. Field on Twitter did a great job with us last weekend. He'll be with us in Baton Rouge this weekend, obviously, as well as Randall Sweet 5, and Dakota Gregory at Dakota Gregory. Big congrats to Bryce, who got a big gig over at USAO. Big congrats to Dakota, who got a big gig, who he'll be able to announce that. So some ins and outs. We are a factory here. It seems like it is just Hoove and I just hanging out, and everybody else. So obviously Randall's gotten a new gig. Everybody leaves us, gets a job. Congratulations to all of those. But Hoove, do we have anything else before we close the book, do Thanksgiving? We'll have the preview video coming for you on Friday. I say that. We need to record the preview video right now. Don't forget that. Other than that, though, I think it's that should conclude everything until Saturday evening in Baton Rouge.
Saturday's going to be a blast. Friday is going to suck because I hate flying. But Thursday is going to be amazing because I get to spend time with family, eating until I can't see, and watching football. So can't wait for that. Hope everybody out there has a great Thanksgiving.
We get through the first pass of food, Hoove. When you go back, I think the second plate is always the most telling of what are you really made of on Thanksgiving, both in amount and what you heap on. What is the thing that when you're going back the second time through, you're plopping on your plate?
Everything. I don't discriminate on my Thanksgiving plate.
Here's the thing, when you look at my Thanksgiving plate, the first time through, you're gonna have the turkey. Obviously, we obviously have ham as well, but we're a family that does a lot of turkey. We have ham at Thanksgiving, and then we go mainly ham for Christmas. So I usually just go full speed ahead with the turkey at Thanksgiving, then file the ham through. But you'll have the ham, you'll have like 7 rolls because I'm fat. You'll have the potato casserole, the green bean casserole, the broccoli casserole, the mashed potatoes, all that stuff. When I go back the second time, I'm going for 3 things. My pie chart shrinks. It doesn't shrink. I load up the plate the second time, but it just becomes a 3-headed monster pretty evenly. Potatoes 2 ways, as in mashed and casserole. Those are the 2 forms. And the green bean casserole. And then I'll reheat the turkey for dinner. But for the most part, I'm going hog wild on the green bean casserole, the mashed potatoes, and the potato casserole. And then obviously from start to finish, I've probably eaten enough rolls to like feed a small village. But again, you're not 5'9" and 200 if you're not a fatty bombaddy when it comes to Thanksgiving.
You're saying $94 worth of rolls is what you eat on Thanksgiving.
Correct.
Yeah.
100%. That's the correct answer. $94 worth of dinner rolls is what I would get to celebrate a big
There's
day.
actually, Ryan, there's actually a close it on this, semi-famous story of me at Christmas. I was in college. We were at my friend's house, and his mom just kept making food. The entire Barry Sanders versus Wyoming Holiday Bowl, for which he ran for like 35 yards or whatever it was, 5 touchdowns, was an incredible game, 62-24, something like that. The entire game, I sat at the dining room table, shoveling in food. 3.5 hours of John Hoover eating Christmas dinner.
Right.
The family was like, "That's your friend?"
You approached it like coaches approach recruiting visits, where it's like, it doesn't matter if I've been to 2 recruits' houses already. When we show up,
Yep.
if Mama recruit is
Oh, I'm so
making
hungry.
dinner, you let her load the plate and you eat everything and
Yep.
you put a smile on your face. It's the best meal ever. So
That's how it's
everybody
done.
enjoy your Thanksgiving. Like we said, at some point there will be a post-game podcast out eventually from Parts Unknown, but just follow us there. Sooners on SI podcast. Fire it up if you're a podcaster via the Google Play, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. Follow us. Leave us a 5-star rating and review if you're so inclined. It helps us get found by other Oklahoma fans. The more people that listen, the more stuff we could do. Or if you're on the YouTube, John Hoover Media, just make sure you hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment. How many rushing yards? I want to know combined between Xavier Robinson, Jack Startled. Leave that in the comments. What are you power rank your second trip through the line at Thanksgiving, what you're putting on your plate? And finally, where do you want us to do the postgame pod from? The car, an airport, a Waffle House? We're open to all suggestions. Hit us up there as well. We've used up way too much time, though. For John Hoover, I'm Ryan Chapman. Next time you hear us, Karst will be here as well. And we will talk to you guys from somewhere in Louisiana. We'll see you.